All right, so this problem is from our chapter 8 problems. It's example 4. Um, it begins to take purchase accounting and lay it out, inventory purchase accounting and lay it out side by side with cost of goods sold. And that's super important that we see both kind of side by side because, of course, they are both parts of an inventory system that we need to worry about. Now, what we have here is a purchase and sell log. And basically, it just dictates where we began at, right? What our beginning inventory is. Notice that the beginning inventory never begins with any purchase discounts, returns, or freight because really it's anticipated that all of those, remember, all of these accounts in a periodic system get closed into cost of goods sold and ending inventory at the end of the period. That they go away. They're not permanent accounts. So purchase discounts, purchase returns, purchases, and freight all get closed, and their amounts either end up in our inventory or our cost of goods sold based on when they were purchased and whether we're using LIFO, FIFO, right? Um, just understand that beginning inventory has all of these embedded in to this $11 per unit price. Okay. The others, this represents gross price per unit and is prior to, right? We bought 25 units at $12. Well, that is, we would have all 25 and pay 12 per, assuming we don't take a discount, assuming we didn't return anything, and assuming no freight, which wasn't the case. So this is our all units purchased at full price, but then we took a 2% discount, had two returns and 30 cents freight. So the amount won't really be $12 when we think about it anymore. Okay. So that's true for all of these pieces. Don't worry too much about the sell and the sell entries. I put a price here and just neglected to put a price in the other two areas. That's okay. We're more interested in the inventory side of this anyway. This is just to give us the ability to record, debit accounts receivable, credit sales revenue for 20 times 27. Okay. Um, when we're beginning with this, now there's always basically for these get so laden with detail and so many things and different price points going on that one of the things I just typically always assume is that we're always going to be purchasing this inventory on credit. Okay. Um, you know, gross method for recording discounts. This could change. It could be gross or net, but in this case, it is the gross method. So make sure you pay attention to which one you're using. Um, whether they use gross or net, they're always going to pay within discount windows. They're always going to take advantage of that discount. So you don't have to worry about, oh, wait, he said there was a discount, but they didn't take it. So then I ignore it. Don't worry about that piece. They're always going to take the discount. Freight is paid in cash. Freight doesn't tend to be involved with inventory shipments because a lot of these are now contracted to third parties. Also, paying it in cash keeps it clear from any discount that's offered to the account payable, okay, the credit purchase. So I try to keep those two things distinct. And then always return units get reimbursed freight. So that is a consideration that we're never, if we return items, we're not going to pay full freight. Before I jump into the general strategy of these, I start by asking for you just to record the journal entries for December 5th alone. So just this one for the purchase and using all of these facts of the 2% discount to return two items returned and 30-cent freight per unit, um, just to kind of lay out a few things. So let's look at that really quickly. I hope the purchase journal entries, you started to master them to some degree. So if I purchase 25 at 12, and let's say that on this side, I'm going to do the perpetual method. And then we'll follow up with the periodic side by side over here. So if I 25 at 12, that would be $300. And if I'm working with the perpetual method, that's just all going to be debited to the inventory account because that 25 times 12 is 300. Now, um, we're recording the full price because we are using the gross method. If we were going to use the net method, of course, then we would record this at 300 times the net of discount price or 0.98%. So just 0.98 or 98%. Then our accounts payable is also recorded here at the full price because we're using gross. Over here on the periodic side, we're not going to debit inventory anymore. We're going to debit purchases for 300. And our account payable still stays the same account, same amount under gross method, periodic. One other thing we got to consider is the freight. So the freight is 30 cents per unit, and I bought 25 units, so that's $7.50. That would also be a debit to inventory under the perpetual method. And remember, that's cash that we're paying for freight. Over here, and we're not going to debit inventory, we're going to debit freight in another adjunct asset account from the periodic method. But notice, right, between perpetual and periodic, our dollar amount values are not changing. The only thing that's changing are the accounts that I'm recording with the purchases. Now, we returned 2 units, and remember, we were reimbursed freight. So for those returns, because we're doing gross method, I'm going to value each at $12. Under the perpetual method, the return reduces my account payable. I don't get cash for the inventory returned. And again, that $24 is just 2 units returned times $12 each. So that reduces some of what I still have to pay on my inventory invoice. And I would record this as a credit to inventory because of those 2 units that were returned, right? I didn't keep them, so I need to remove them from my inventory purchase. Plus, I get some freight reimbursed, right? For 2 units, 30 cents a unit. Not much, but still, I do get some freight reimbursed. So that's going to be a cash reimbursement since I paid my freight in cash for 60 cents, 30 cents each for 2 units. And then I'm going to credit the inventory account because that freight for those 2 units was recorded right alongside all the other units that came in. But if I'm not keeping them, it should not influence my inventory value. The final piece then is, oh, sorry, over here on the periodic side, of course, it's still a debit to accounts payable for the same amount, right? Accounts payable doesn't change between perpetual and periodic, but instead of crediting inventory, I credit purchase returns for 24. And then when I'm recording the reimbursement of freight, it's still 60 cents of cash. But instead of crediting inventory, now I credit where I debited for the freight before, which is freight in. Oops, sorry, not 30 cents, but 60 cents should be credited. Six. Try to make that an obvious six, right? Because now we had embedded those 2 units along with the rest. But if we're not keeping them, then it shouldn't be in our inventory system. Now, finally, when we're paying it, remember we're not paying the full 300 anymore because 24 got knocked off. So if I look at my accounts payable account, then it started at 300, but then I debited it for 24. So I have $276 remaining in my account payable. That's the amount that I'm paying off here. Debit accounts payable for $276. Now, this is the full price. But if I always pay in discount, then I'm not going to pay the full price. I'm actually going to pay $276. That's my full. I get to net 2% off of it. So I'm going to multiply it by 98% to get that net of discount price, which is $270.48. That's the amount of cash I have to pay in order to settle out my account with the inventory vendor and get rid of my liability. But we have, remember, I like to record these as the two main accounts. I'm paying off a liability with cash, but these amounts are not similar. We need something to balance my journal entry. The reason why I'm paying less cash and paying off a greater amount of payable is that I got a discount. And that discount actually shows up in the perpetual system as a credit to inventory. Remember, we want my inventory to be at the cost I paid for it. When I first bought it, I recorded it at 300. Of course, I did return some, so it came down to 276. I'm ignoring freight for now. It came down to 276, but I didn't even pay 276 for it. I actually only paid 270.48. And so that is what my inventory should be valued at. So I have to take the 300, subtract the 24, and then subtract the 552. That'll bring me down to the cash that I paid for the inventory. Of course, the freight adds in too. I had to spend 750 to get all of the items there. I was reimbursed by 60 cents for that um, return. And so I'm going to then look at, well, what is the overall, effect to inventory just from this piece in isolation? If I look at just this purchase in isolation, right, and record all my debits and credits, 300, 750, 24, 60 cents, and then 552. If I go through and balance that out, what I should get is, let me do that quick math here. $277.38. All right, so this is the net value or the net amount by which this purchase affected inventory. Now, this isn't the complete inventory account. This is just the single purchase. So this is my 12.5 purchase, right? There's definitely beginning inventory that I didn't put in this account. So just understand, I'm just taking this as to see a piece of what's going on here. All right, we'll come back to this piece. Let's finish out the periodic system. The periodic system would have the same account payable amount left after the returns, $276. I'm still paying within the discount, so I'm going to pay the same amount of cash. Remember, any sort of accounting adjustment does not affect how I record cash. Cash is just, it is, you cannot misrecord cash. You have a dollar, you debit it. You spend a dollar, you credit it for $1 always. Right? We have something missing here, but instead of crediting inventory, in this case, we credit purchase discounts, and that's for 552. Right, so I want to show, so this is the net movement to my inventory account. Now, another way to talk about this would be this is the net effect of my purchase or net purchases, right? Net purchases under the perpetual method. Well, all of those accounts got logged into inventory, right? But they don't over here. Over here, right, we have a lot of different accounts bringing up net purchases. So we got our purchases account, and that was debited at 300, nothing else. We have my freight account, and that was debited, then credited. So 750 was the opening debit, We credited it by 60 cents. That left me with 6.90. I had purchase returns, and those were credited for 24 up here. And then I have purchase discounts, and those were credited for 5.52 when I paid. So those are the sum. The only one that had more than one entry was the freight. And now if I'm trying to find net purchases this way, remember, net purchases, when I have a periodic system, is just going to follow adjunct contra rules. Take 300, add 690, subtract, because these are my contra accounts, my contra assets, $24, 5.52. And if I take that, notice I get the same amount as my net purchases, even though they're being spread out over four different accounts, the same as my inventory account here. So whether I'm using periodic or perpetual, that does not change a thing. All I'm changing is the account names, not the amounts. And I'm aggregating these four accounts basically into the same debits and credits that would have been shown on just a single inventory account.